just goes down here to the 3rd fret or the 5th fret of the G string, bends that up twice again, and then pulls off to that 3rd fret. So one last time, the whole thing. Now, we're going to talk about some of the dynamic things after this, but then he goes to this, he goes to the 5th fret of the G string, and walks up a scale from the 5th fret of the G string to the 3rd fret and 4th fret of the B string, but he slides up that 4th fret to the 6th fret and back down to the 4th fret on the B string. So then he pivots off this, he does this pivot thing off of this, the B flat note on the G string. So to the 6th fret of the B string, and then he goes back down to that B flat note. Then he slides up to that 8th fret of the B string, and he goes back down to the B flat note, and he slides up one last time to that same 8th fret, but he bends it up a half step this time. And then he bends it down with a little vibrato. So that whole thing is... Now, when he slides up to that, he slides into it and bends it up, and then hits it again when it's bent up and pulls it down. So that's so here, after that, he goes back down here and really does a pretty long slide. And he hits that 11th fret and he bends it up a whole step. So that whole thing is... And he hits that twice. And then he goes down to the G string where he plays the 10th fret. And then he plays the 8th and hammers on that 10th fret. So that's... Then he goes from the 8th fret of the G string to the 10th fret of the D string, back to the 8th fret and hammers on and pulls off the 8, 10, 8. So slowly that whole thing is... So then he does two more little things that are like little riffs he throws in. He goes back to this E flat major arpeggio, right? So he goes, he dips the bar down, and he actually scrapes a few strings. And then he does that chromatic thing again. So the 18th fret, and then you pull off 18, 17, 16, 15. But this time, you just walk up the scale from 15, 16, 18, then you go to the, that's all on the E string, then you go to the B string on the 16th fret, and you bend that up a whole step, back down, and then you land on that note, again, the B flat note. The B flat is obviously a theme in this. Lands on that B flat note on the G string, which makes me think that most of this is over a B flat chord. Anyway, so then the last part he goes, so he goes from the 10th fret, again thinking pentatonic, right? He goes from the 10th fret of the D string to the 8th fret of the G string to the 10th fret of the G string. Then he goes back to the 8th fret and slides that up to the 10th fret. So then without picking, he slides that up to the 12th fret and he uses the bar twice to dip it. Then he slides up again without picking to the 14th fret, does the bar once, then he picks the note with the bar. So he goes, and then he picks that, so that's the 14th fret on the G string, and then he picks the 17th fret on the B string. So that whole thing is... And that is the end of the solo. All right, so let's talk about a few of the subtleties that happen during this solo. Because again, it's really just C minor pentatonic, E major pentatonic, with maybe like a ninth in there every once in a while. A few little chromatic movements, but really there's not much else. So the beginning of this is, you know, he's sliding in the pentatonic scale. Now you get that note there or whatever, which is really your, again, your ninth, right? So he slides up to that ninth. If you're thinking, again, this is thinking C minor pentatonic, and I'm just trying to talk about it in that way. So you have, then he subtly bends up a half step where he could have walked up the scale like this. Right? He could have picked that note. But it just sounds really cool to suggest that note. You almost don't even hear it. It's so slow and subtle. But right? Then when he gets to this part, he kind of really plucks that note. So quick bend. And then there is a very gradual bend, but he really plucks the note. And there, he's doing a dynamic thing where he's really lightening up. He's kind of bringing the volume up and down. So you have... And I think he ends actually lightly on that. Right? Then he goes to this, which really comes out. And he does that thing where he's picking some notes, but then not picking that note. Then he picks it again. And then instead of picking it again to get those pull-offs, and it's really loud, at that point the note's dying off a little bit. So then those notes kind of are a little lighter, and then he goes back to picking. So you have light, 4 chromatic notes lightly, and then he picks those kind of hard. And that's kind of an aggressive into that. And that's very staccato, that part. And that bend is really cool, because instead of just going, he does, instead of just, right? And again, it's a little subtlety that makes that phrase, it gives one extra 16th note in there. So you have... and all that is kind of loud and dynamic, right? Then it goes into... and that's kind of loud, but then it gets soft with these octaves. And it gets really kind of mellow and sweet when the melody comes out, right? And even that first bend is really pretty attacked lightly. So you have he picks on that kind of hard, very light, but then he does that twice pretty hard, and that one's kind of hard too as far as picking goes. So you have and then there he could have just done that, but he slides into that note. So you have right, and even this little bend to this hammer-on to this note, I think when he gets that note, he kind of does like a reverse bend just a little bit. Now, I could be imagining that. I just thought it was fun to play that. I don't know. I thought I heard that, but again, I didn't take enough time with this, but and then he picks those notes, and it's that sweet pre-bend where it's bent up a half step before he pulls it down. Instead of, right? So you have, and then he picks these kind of hard. And it's kind of cool, again, that pivoting of notes. He could have just done, right? And let it all ring, but he's bouncing off the notes. And he lets that slightly kind of come out. Then he really kind of rips into this. And then he ends the phrase there. So that's a lot of talk on each individual note. But when I learned this, that's what I picked out of it, those little subtleties. I've always known about his subtle way of bending a note, and again, that's kind of why I love Michael Landau and Scott Henderson, but Michael Landau especially. He's got so many subtleties. He'll, instead of just playing notes, he'll pick them, he'll bend them. Guthrie does a lot of this too. The really good players aren't just playing scales and bending and slides. I mean, everybody does that, but it's the subtle way you're actually working your dynamics. Dynamics is a very important thing. So hopefully you'll take that out of this lesson. So I think that's enough talk on this. I hope you guys like that solo. I will get into hopefully the other Christmas song that he does in the next couple days. So I'll have that for this Christmas, hopefully. Maybe not till next Christmas, but it's a little more rocky. It's got some finger tapping and stuff, which is really cool. And we're definitely going to get into some, eventually during the year, we're going to get into some of his giant solos, because that stuff is just awesome and terrifying, and it's really rocky. But again, he throws in a lot of arpeggios and some chromaticism and bending. He uses the bar a lot and everything, so it's really cool. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It took a little longer than I expected, I think. What can I do? Like I said, I hope you guys have an amazing holiday season. I really, really appreciate your support. Please feel free to write comments, click like and subscribe. Those things really help us know that you guys are enjoying this and you guys want to see more of this kind of stuff. I am going to put a new video on the website. The website's coming, but I'm going to put an update up there so you guys know a little more of the timeline of what's going on and why things have delayed everything. Because there's been a lot of cool things in development. So hopefully you go over to guitarbreakdown.com and check out that video and you'll see all about it. And that's it. Hopefully we'll see you guys in the new year. And as long as the world doesn't end, because the Mayans forgot to write the rest of their calendar. So either way, have a wonderful holiday. I'm going to check to see if there's any coal in my stocking. Maybe. And I will see you on the next lesson. Thanks, guys.